Well, for more insight into Harris's visit to Singapore, especially on the economic front, we're joined live by Steve Chaggaris. He's a political analyst and politics editor of Al Jazeera Digital. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, Rachelle. Thanks for having me.
So first, talk about the importance of Vice President Harris's trip.
Well, let's look at what has happened in the last 4 or 5 years. You had Donald Trump, who was president before Biden, and his foreign policy philosophy was America first. And a lot of allies and partners of the United States felt that America was giving them the short shrift or ignoring them. And so Biden and his administration initially, in the first months of his presidency, have tried to assure U.S. partners that the U.S. is not giving them a short shrift. And so whether it's the president himself or members of his administration, or in this case, Vice President Harris, they're speaking to world leaders and assuring them that the U.S. is still there for them. So from just from a foreign policy standpoint, that's a key. And then, of course, there's an economic standpoint as well. These are key partners in Southeast Asia. Biden has made China a priority in terms of his foreign policy, and because of the location of these nations, this is a big deal for the United States, and it's a big deal for Vice President Harris to be talking to these leaders.
Obviously, a lot else going on in the world. I mean, how hard will it be for the administration to focus on this region right now, especially given the global attention to the situation in Afghanistan?
Well, and you just referenced it. Harris was asked about Afghanistan, but it's again, they're looking at it as an important moment because there are countries around the world who are looking at what happened in Afghanistan or what's happening in Afghanistan and are concerned about is the U.S. going to treat us in that way. There's a sense that the U.S. By some nations is turning their back on Afghanistan, and Harris is reassuring world leaders, at least the ones she's visiting with this week, that that's not the case. You know, in terms of what kind of coverage this visit's going to get and what kind of priority it's going to get in terms of everything else going on in the world, you're not going to hear much about it in the United States. But to Biden and his administration, they're looking at this as an important part of their outreach to that region, to Asia especially. And look, they've been doing a lot of it. They've been talking to the Japanese Prime Minister and South Korea President, and now in Southeast Asia. And so this is a big priority for Biden, and you're going to see them continue to keep it a priority.
So then, as part of this outreach, then talk about the various initiatives that have been announced and the areas of cooperation between Southeast Asian countries and the U.S.
Well, it's twofold. It's economic, obviously, and you know, the other part of that plays into that is the security part of it. And of course, because of the geography, the U.S. wants to make sure that not only their security interests are taken care of with places like Singapore and Vietnam, especially with China butting heads with the United States, but their economic interests as well. And so you have Harris out there talking to the leaders of Singapore and Vietnam, and again, reassuring them that the U.S. is there for them, but also making sure that they're with us and helping the United States on both an economic and a security front.
So to that point then, talk about the state of Singapore's economy, especially amid the pandemic.
I mean, in terms of Singapore's economy, in terms of the pandemic, I mean, what I can speak to is that the U.S. sees this region as extremely important economically. And even with the pandemic, I mean, let's look specifically at the problem getting semiconductors, for instance, from that part of the world over the United States. They're seeing this as a significant issue, especially during the pandemic. And so they're really sort of making sure that everything's tied up. Again, think about it from the terms of the 4 years prior to Biden, none of this stuff in their mind was being taken care of. You add on top of that a pandemic, and the United States feels that this region, in terms of the economy, especially during COVID and during the pandemic, needs to be dealt with.
And just very quickly, what else are you watching for the remainder of Vice President Harris's visit?
Well, she goes to Vietnam, and of course, you know, the one parallel that a lot of folks are making, especially in light of what's going on in Afghanistan, is how the United States left Vietnam in 1975 and how the United States is leaving Afghanistan now. And there's no question that she will be asked about this. the line from the administration, I think the line you'll hear from Vice President Harris, is that they're not looking back, they're looking forward, and she will try to shift the focus back to what she's doing in those two countries, Singapore and Vietnam. But there are going to be a lot of questions, especially with the parallels between the two countries and how the U.S. Exited both countries.
Indeed. Well, thank you. Always great to get your insights. Steve Chaggaris there, political analyst and politics editor of Al Jazeera Digital.